What's going on, guys? Christian here from CK Wraps. Today I'm doing this video on 5 most common mistakes that beginners make when getting into vinyl wrapping, or just people getting into vinyl wrapping in general. We're going to be using a different type of vinyl wrap today. We're going to be using a TPU, or cosmetic paint protection film. The 5 mistakes are heating the material too much, so that's going to be 1. Cutting the material, that's going to be 2. Stretching the material, that's going to be 3. Leaving too much material around edges and so forth, that's 4. And hand placement, that's the one, hand placement. Hand placement is crucial. This material is much different than what you've used to use, or what you have been using if you have used any before, as far as a regular vinyl wrap goes. A regular vinyl wrap would be something like a cast material, PVC, polymeric type of material, and there's an abundance of those on the market, and that's generally what we've been using for color changes. However, these days, the entire market and the industry is moving towards colored paint protection film, which is what you can see is on this vehicle here. It responds much differently to heating, stretching, cutting, all those things. So we're gonna have to relearn this a little bit. So let's get into this. Let's grab a piece of material. I'll bring it over to the hood and I'll get the camera in for you guys. So this color specifically is called Demon Black, and it's from Vivid. It's their color fusion line, top coated, so hydrophobic, self-healing, all that great stuff that clear paint protection film does, okay? This is one of my definitely go-tos as far as products go. I don't even use regular vinyl wrap anymore. I haven't actually wrapped a customer's car in a regular vinyl wrap, like a PVC, a cast, or a polymeric, in a year, over a year now. Crazy. It was before Christmas time last year, and now it's before Christmas time this year. So it was like November the last time I wrapped a car last year. Okay, so let's take some of this. Oh, see how it just slides right off the surface? That's just because the surface is so slick because of that top coating, okay? It's okay, I'll pick that piece up afterwards. Let's move the camera in and get into this. Mistake number 1. Pulling the material beyond an edge, okay? Now with this being TPU, or thermoplastic polyurethane, this material actually stretches much more freely in room temperature. Adding heat to it doesn't really give you a lot more extra stretch out of the material, though it does help relax it and softens it up. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna stretch the material past this edge. So we're gonna pull this material. Right now it's relaxed at the edge. So I could technically take this and just pull it a little bit tight and squeegee it out just like this, and we wouldn't have any issues at our edge right now, okay? But we're gonna actually pull the material towards the edge. So I'm gonna pull it without adding any heat. Cool. Now I'm gonna squeegee it down. This is gonna do one of 2 things. Actually, it's gonna do a couple of things, or cause a couple of things to happen. It's gonna cause a line right here, and there is one. Not sure how well that will show in the camera, but there is a lift line / glue line that runs right along here. That's where I lifted the material up, had it where it had it anchored, and then pulled from that point there. We don't ever really want to do that, okay? So that's a bonus mistake. Let's call it mistake number 0.5. Okay, here's the other mistake now. Now when I lift this material up, you can see the material just snapped back, even though I squeegeed it to the edge. I squeegeed it all down. You see these wrinkles here that are all leading away from the edge? These are bad wrinkles to have, or bad fingers to have. These mean that there is tension most times at the edge. So no matter what we do, when we keep pulling it and squeegeeing it and pulling it and squeegeeing it and pulling it and squeegeeing, it just keeps wanting to pull back and lift off that edge. So this is where you're gonna have your most common form of failure. Failure meaning the material is lifting or pulling back off of edges. Also, that can happen even if you don't have any tension there, if you don't clean your edges properly. So do make sure to clean them with isopropyl alcohol, wash your car down thoroughly, and so forth. But again, these are the wrinkles you don't want to have. So how do we avoid those? Well, we avoid those by not stretching beyond the edge, but we can stretch to the edge. I'm just going to trim some of this back so there's less material there. We can stretch to the edge, but we just have to do it differently. So if I lift that back to where I had it anchored right here, if I pull it outwards like this, to the left and the right, and I still pulled it down towards this edge, what happened here, my line is still there. That's because, again, you're not supposed to pull from that point like that. And the more you lift it up and the more you reposition it, the more you're gonna get these lift lines in the material. So now when I lift this, watch, smooth on this edge, more or less, all the way across, okay? So what the material is actually wanting to do right now is wanting to pull itself underneath the hood. You can see that I didn't even push that under there. It's actually pulling itself down underneath the hood. There are some fingers right there, but that's just because I don't have a wide enough piece to be able to pull it all the way through and all the way around. I had to stop here. That's where I had my hands. Either way, that's the correct way on how you want your edge to look. You want it to be smooth like that. So there will be times when you do have to pull the material to the edge, but it's all about how you do it. That has us move into our next mistake. So let's go into that one. Our next mistake, mistake number 2, is hand placement. It is crucial how you place your hands for you to be able to wrap around objects. Now, a lot of people often have too much material, meaning the mirror is this size right here, but your piece of material maybe even twice the size of this piece here. And this piece is actually quite large still. I can do it with a smaller piece than this. What happens when your piece of material is too large is that you end up putting your hands in the incorrect position. I'm just trimming this down a little bit to show you. So by putting your hands in the incorrect position, it causes you to not get a good pull or a good stretch on the material, but it also causes you to stretch the material in the wrong way, meaning towards edges and not along the edges. Let's take this piece right here. This mirror's already wrapped, but that's okay. We can go right over top of it and show you what I mean. So we're going to take this section right here, and this mirror is a 2-piece mirror wrapped right now. So there's a piece on the inside, there's a seam right there, and then there's a piece on the outside. It can be done in one. It's just not worth the risk. You're also going to deteriorate or diminish the quality of the finish / color. It will discolor the material if you stretch it too far. Let's take this piece though. Let's grab it and stick it down right here. And let's make sure my placement is in line. Okay, so this is a pretty good sized piece. I don't have way too much material, meaning I'm not grabbing all the way down here holding my material. We see where my material ends right there? That's the edge, that's the corner of the mirror right there. So I have maybe like an extra inch past that, that's it. Top and bottom, we can have more, that's okay. Just don't want to have too much. But I do have about 3-4 inches past the top edge and about only an inch past the bottom edge, maybe even less than that over there, but that's okay. Should be able to make that work. Now, I don't have to add any heat because this is TPU, so we're just gonna pull the material. Now, hand placement, you can see that I've actually moved my hands inward. My hands are not at the very end of the wrap right here. Because if I take this right now and I pull like this, look what happens. I get a lot of wrinkles coming all the way across, and I'm gonna have tension at my edge so it pulls back. It's just gonna be sloppy and make a mess of everything. Because right now, what I've done here is I've taken this and I've stretched and I've stretched and I've stretched and I've stretched past the very corner over here, past the end of it. Meaning that when I do pull out all these wrinkles and I go to cut, or even probably before that, the film's just gonna pull back. You can actually, if I just release it, you can see it just pulling back already, okay? So we put our hands over top of the material and over top of the panel, or the mirror in this case. See where that is? My hands right now are on top of the mirror. They're not off the mirror, which would be over here. They're on top of the mirror. This causes me to stretch the material on the inside, and then I end up landing on the mirror. This piece is getting a little sloppy now because I've messed around a little bit. Okay, so we also want to expand the material outwards as we do this, watch. So it goes down much, much, much smoother, okay? And then at the very end right over here at the corner, I'm gonna stop right there. So now I know that I have not stretched past that corner there. And look how much cleaner this is overall, right off the bat. Squeegee out some of this air. Cool. I want to lift the material up like that. See how it just drops down? Goes right down to the bottom edge, all by itself. Same thing on the top here. Just gonna lift that up. Cool, boom. That's all done on the very top edge. I don't have to do anything else. Now we're ready to, well, I do have to do more stuff. I have to trim and I have to cut and I have to squeeze out and around the edges and stuff. But this mirror is not going to fail. If I move the mirror, I shift the mirror this way to show you the corner over here. I can lift that up. See how it doesn't move? It actually goes back down. And I stretched all the way across from here, all the way to here. Okay? So we know now that the material is not going to fail at this point. It's not going to fail at these edges either, because as you can see with these edges, they're all rounded. Everything is rounded looking. There's no wrinkles on any of the edges pulling away from the edge. If anything, the wrinkles were running along the edges. I pulled them out towards the edge, and now that causes the material to wrap around the mirror, in this case, all by itself. We're going to get into our next mistake. Okay, guys, mistake number 3. Leaving too much material around your edges. Okay, let's cut some of this away. Obviously, we know that we need to. That's a mess. Now, what happens if I try to push all this underneath? Well, it's only going to go so far before it's either doesn't stick to anything anymore, or just begins to bunch up more, or starts to look really ugly, and so forth. You can see me in the reflection of the mirror. So we don't want to wrap in and overwrap way too far. We want to go to a point that covers the exterior color and whatever of the panel, the paints, more or less, cover as much of that as possible, and then we're going to have to cut it off at some point. Now, this mirror cap has a very obvious point on the inside here where it has a nice little indentation, a nice little edge, because it's just a mirror cap, so it sits right in this nice little gap right there, and we can cut in that gap. So just to show you, I'll find it. Okay, let's move this out of the way. Okay, so now we have it cut off super, super, super clean right to that underside edge. Oops, try and get you, there we go. I don't know if you can see how well you can see that, but right up here. We don't want to wrap all this extra material in there. It's going to look ugly. It's the same thing that goes from the underside of a hood or around a door and so forth. We want to have enough to cover the paint, but not too much where it starts to look ugly or actually begins to this will just simply begin to fall off. Another example of that is like on your corners. If you have too much material on your corners, the material, so let's say this corner down here, for example, the material, when you go to wrap around, ends up just sticking to itself before it sticks to the actual panel, which causes the material to sort of just hang on the corner. So we want to trim, how do I do these corners? I trim around the corner. Like I don't leave it so that I'm leaving this huge piece, this huge square piece here. I trim it circular because this is rounded. And so then when I go to heat and push the material down and around, it molds to the corner because I've already cut it in a circular way. Makes the most sense. If it was an angular corner or square, then that's different. But a lot of them are going to be a little bit more rounded like this. Fronts, your fenders, your pillar up here. There's a lot of corners that are like that. But the fenders especially, like where it meets the bumper, like right there, and then the fronts and so forth. So there's a lot of those corners there. Now let's get into our next mistake. Mistake number 4. Let's get into this one. This is going to have to do with cutting, okay? Because this is TPU, this is a much more resilient material to cut. It's just much more resilient overall. It protects the paint. That's why it does a better job of protecting the paint. Of course, you're going to see dirt there. I haven't wiped the bumper off yet, so don't mind that. Again, this is just to show you, I'm going to actually show you 2 things in this video here. I'm going to show you how to do the corner, but I'm also going to show you why it's important and how you cut this material. Okay, so this material hates dull blades. And don't just buy any run-of-the-mill type of blade. I buy the extra sharp black blades, or in this case, I have titanium blades. Like these are really, really, really sharp. But this one has been used for a little while now. And I'm not sure how well you can tell, but you can see the very tip of it. It's not pointy anymore. It's pointy, but it's not as sharp as it used to be. So when I go to cut the material, you can see, like this stuff is strong. I haven't even cut a slit through that yet. I have to actually, look, I'm pushing with the knife only. That's how strong this stuff is. This is where a lot of people are going to have issues when it comes to trimming and cutting with this type of material. It's just different than what you might be used to when you're wrapping with a cast PVC polymer type of material. This material is much more rubbery and elastic. Think about a rubber band. It's a lot harder to cut through a rubber band than it is, a more rigid piece of paper, for example, because this film maintains elasticity just like an elastic band, even in cooler temperatures. So while most PVCs, casts, and polymeric materials become rigid and firm in cooler temperatures. It's not only that, but they're also just not as much of a rubbery type of compound. So we actually have to make sure that our knife is super sharp, okay? So again, you can see that I'm pushing in there and I can cut through it. Yeah, I've cut through a bunch of times now. Now let's snap a blade off, fresh one here. And see the difference, okay? Right through. Like, I'm pushing just as hard as I am, but now I'm going into the material. Like, now I can actually cut very easily through the material. Okay, so that's super important when it comes to this type of material. Now let's do the corner right up here. Corners are going to be different than they used to be. Well, if you haven't used a cast PVC or polymeric before, it won't be any different. This will just be all be new for you overall. But we can't heat and shrink this film. This film does not shrink. What we do is we mold the film using heat. So we mold the film into a new shape. Now, just for the sake of things, I'm going to try and keep this as simple as possible. But normally I would like pre-tuck the material in and whatever. But we're just going to cut right here in the gap on the other side. And we'll do the top corner, the fender side. It's the easier one to see. And then I'm going to cut around. So right here, I'm going to cut that little circle that I was talking to you about, okay? Stand up so I can try to stay out of your way and do this. Because we want a circle to go around our circular corner. Okay, so let's go like that. Let's just trim here for the sake of that and get this piece out of the way. Even there, I trim a little circle. Okay, so that's got a slight curve to it. That's got a slight curve to it as well. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit more even. Let's try. There we go. Okay, now we're talking. Okay, so I'm not sure how well you can see that, but I believe you should be able to see that that corner right there is cut circular, rounded. That one there, it's a little more square, but it'll still do the job. So what are we gonna do now? It's a good idea to put a glove on. So I'm gonna put my wrap glove on because it's gonna get hot. Now my heat gun is rated at 1,000 degrees from 2 inches away. It tells you the distance right there on the very top. That's their maximum temperature. So I control the temperature by time and distance. So how close I am versus how long I hold it for and so forth. But I always put it on the max temperature. With the film being elevated like this, it's not gonna take very long for it to heat up to a couple hundred degrees. And that's all you really need to get to is a couple hundred degrees. You don't need to get it to 1,000 degrees or more, just a couple hundred degrees, and this material will mold down and around that corner. But if I heat it, it doesn't shrink, okay? It barely moves at all, okay? Barely moves at all. So it's not gonna just shrink down and around like other materials, cast, PVC, and polymeric would. Polymeric is especially good at doing that, where the corners are effortless. In this situation, you're gonna have to put a bit more effort into the corners. Now, you don't wanna stretch the material to the corner and do any of that stuff because you wanna move this material around as little as possible. It's gonna have the cleanest overall appearance and finish when you're done. So we don't wanna lift that up and pull towards the corner and 3D stretch it and so forth. We just wanna have it in its very natural state. Okay, so let's heat it up. Make sure my heat gun's hot. It is. Heat that up, and then we're gonna come in a couple times and then press down on the corner, okay? Now start molding that around, and it's gonna start molding that around a little bit too, and then get in there, okay? So I approach it with my thumb first, and then now that it's rounded off on the top side, I can't get in there into the gap with my finger anymore. So we're gonna have to now take the squeegee. So I'm going to take my heat gun again, warm it up, and then touch that up right there and finish it up with my squeegee. And this is not just a beautiful corner. This is a magnificent corner, okay? Big word for a small corner, but it is gorgeous. It looks like a tiny little rounded marble, like it is as perfect as it can get. That's because A, I didn't leave too much material. B, I cut the corner in a circular fashion. And then C, I heat it and I mold it down and around the corner. Let's do this one over here. So again, come in there. Little movement, that's just the material relaxing. It's not shrinking though. So you can see it's not going down on its own. Press down, thumb first, okay? Or finger, whatever. Mold the rest around after you do that. Now we still have to get in there with our squeegee. But again, you'll be able to see that this is gonna go down Beautiful. And again, another magnificent corner. And it can be that easy to do. So I'll just try and put my squeegee under there so you can sort of see. Hopefully you can see the color difference. It might show you a bit better. Maybe I can get you a bit more bird's eye over top. 1 second. I'm gonna zoom out so it's not so wobbly. Oops, that's in. Oh, maybe I can go in. There we go. Okay. Oops. There we go. Lock it on there. So now you can see the corners, okay? Corners came out looking super, super nice. So I'll put my squeegee under there just so you can see the color difference. There's no extra material hanging off. There's no wrinkles or creases or anything at all on those corners. They are just round, beautiful, perfect looking corners. Now we just did some heating. Let's get into our last mistake. We're on our last mistake, mistake number 5, and this is heating the material too much. I'm going to show you what happens. Again, this is TPU. This is not cast PVC or polymer, okay? So we have to handle this material in a different way. I'm going to anchor this here. It's just an anchor point, so I can show you what happens when we heat and stretch. Now, I can take this material right now, and I can stretch it, okay? I can stretch it really, really, really hard. You can probably see my nice reflection. I can see my face off of it really nicely. I can stretch it really hard, okay? Let's add some heat to it. And the integrity of the film is perfect, okay? Let's add some heat to it. Now, adding enough heat to it will give me a little bit more elasticity out of the film, a little bit more stretch out of it. But adding too much heat to it is going to cause it, cause it to break. That didn't break, that just pulled off the car. I need more of an anchor point. 1 second, let's undo that. I don't care if there's all these wrinkles in it, it doesn't matter right now. Now, if that was to happen, let's say, with a piece that I was wrapping the car with and wrinkled up a lot like that, I'd probably just get a new piece because it's gonna have marks in it. And this type of material does not like to be creased or wrinkled at all. It doesn't go away. Most don't, by the way. But I mean, yeah, some of this will it'll look like it's smoothed out, but by the time you wrap a hood with it or something, you're gonna start to see those marks in it. Okay, so let's warm that up again. Let's put the heat gun down and let's give it a good pull and a good stretch. And I can get a lot more stretch out of it, okay? Okay, that's quite a bit of stretch. Try and get this to sit here. You can hear it sounds like an elastic band or a balloon. Super tight, right? So you can even hear like that rubbery, balloonish sound. Okay, so now what happens? Let's say I heated this a bit more. Watch how quickly, or watch what happens. Okay, so, oops, let's put that back. Okay, so I'm actually just gonna pull it. So let's let that off. I'm just gonna pull it, okay? So now I'm gonna heat it up a little bit more. And now we're gonna pull it. Okay, so right there we go, that's what I was looking for. Okay, so you see right in the center, stay down, right here, all that cracking. Okay, I'll zoom in on that as soon as I can get this to just sit here for a second. See the recoil on this stuff? It's strong, okay? This is why you really don't wanna have tension at your edges. Let's zoom in on that so you can see. The film is permanently cracked. Okay? That's permanent. This is never, ever going away. This happens with TPU. I have never seen this happen. Never's a big word to use, but I can't recall ever seeing this happen with a cast PVC or polymer type of material, other than chrome. Chrome is a bit different. It is still a cast material, but it has a real metal layer in it. If it is real chrome, it'll have a real metal layer in it. So that's the layer that will break. In this situation, right here, it's the surface of the film has cracked, okay? It's very textured. You can probably hear that. Also, what will happen, and I barely heated that. It wasn't even that much. Not as much as I could heat like a PVC or cast or polymeric. Okay, so that will never recover. I can heat it and I'll show you. See how it goes back, but doesn't go away? See that? That's just done. Now, the other thing that will happen here is, zoom back a bit, just a bit too close. Let's heat it again, a little bit more this time. And the film, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the film right now. I can heat it up really, really, really hot. It actually has a very, I would say it has a pretty high burn point, but nothing's happened to it at all right now, okay? It's still in good shape other than that mark that I have right there. Now, I can heat up a PVC and a polymeric like this and pull it, no problem. Get some crazy stretch out of it, like, and it'll go back to normal afterwards too. This one, on the other hand, let's take it, rip, okay? It was a bit compromised there already, but see how it just ripped cleanly all the way across the rest of the way? Again, that's just because now it's too hot. Like, I can actually just tear it apart now, look at this. Not anymore, it's cooling down, but there, just tear it apart. It's just because it's too hot. So this actually has a much lower threshold when it comes to how much heat you can heat it. This is why when I'm installing the material, you won't see me heat this up very much at all. I'll heat it up a very little bit and that's it. Like, just to add a bit more pliability to it, other than the fact that when I'm doing corners and I'm wrapping around those corners and I want to heat a lot and mold the film to the corners and to the edges and so forth. But that's the only time I would heat it to more or less around that temperature there. The post-heat temperature, from what I have experienced with this type of material, is a lower post-heat temperature, meaning like instead of hitting, let's say 200 degrees Fahrenheit to hit a post-heat temperature, and if you want to know more about post-heating and stuff like that, check out my website, ckapps.com. Links in the top corner and in the description. Had to throw that in there. But if you want to know, like, post-heating is going to basically kill the memory in the material. I have a great way of explaining post-heating, but we'll get into that in another video because I have like a scientific method behind it and understanding of what happens, as opposed to just saying, oh, it kills the memory and like, yeah, the glue starts to settle and it helps the glue fill in the air channels. But I have a better way to explain this. Anyways, the post-heat temperature with this material, from what I've experienced, could be around like 160 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. So not quite as hot as you would need to get with more cast polymeric PVC types of materials. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this 5 mistakes, probably 6 or 7 in there, video, and how to resolve them. If you did, give the video a like. Don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget to check out my website, ckapps.com. Thank you for watching. As always, I appreciate it. Take care.